In his first national signing day at Delaware State, Desean Jackson pulls off a splash move that showcases he knows exactly what recruiting is about. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode will wrap up with a look at Lucheyona Weaver out of North Carolina A&T versus Gabbi Cunningham in the 2-week series that these women had in the 60-meter hurdles. In segment 2, I want to get all of my laughs out because I find it absolutely hilarious that after the disrespect shown to Patrick Crarey, that FAMU is already ready to offer him a contract extension only halfway through his first season. But let's kick it off with some other news. Desean Jackson pulls off a power play on National Signing Day, and I'm unsure if we're going to get into an entire Delaware State recruiting class breakdown. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll do it more than we are today. Right now, we're just going to focus on one player, Chris Trumble. But I'm not sure if we're going to get into an entire breakdown or not. But what I can say is this is a splash move. And if you've been an everydayer for a while, you know that I don't really use terms like that when talking about recruiting classes. This isn't even really my cup of tea because I'm way more hesitant. I'm way more reserved with making predictions. And I view this as a very prediction-based topic because you have to predict, how do they fit into an offense? How do they translate to the collegiate game if they played in high school and they're coming straight from the high school ranks, or if they're a transfer guy who hasn't played any on the college ranks, right? Like, you have to do a lot of those things, and that's not necessarily my cup of tea. So I don't like making big statements, but to me, Delaware State grabbing Chris Trumbull is a splash move because of the context around it and also because of who he is as a player. I think that Desean Jackson snatching Chris Trumbull from Jackson State is a huge deal. This one's for Isaiah Guthrie. You took him, now we taking Trumbull. You're not getting another one of our Delaware kids. I doubt that's what Desean said, but that's my thought process. See, here's the deal about Chris Trumbull is on National Signing Day, he decommits from Jackson State after only committing to them a couple of days prior. He opened up February uncommitted. National Signing Day was the 5th. So it's not like it was a lot of time in between the time that he committed and decommitting and then signing with Delaware State. This is all a very rapid process, So I got to make sure that I put Desean Jackson in there. I got to make sure that I say he flipped from Jackson State to Desean Jackson in the Delaware State Hornets, because I do believe that's a big deal about it. You have to understand who we're working with here. Delaware State stunk last year. Jackson State was great last year. If I told you that a player was committed to one and then last minute signed with the other team, you would probably think that Delaware State got their guy stolen. But instead, it was Delaware State that was out here stealing. So I wanna commend Desean Jackson. I got to make sure I say his whole name, or maybe I'll say Coach Jack, right? Because if I just say Jackson, you may think I'm talking about the school. But I got to commend Coach Jack, because this is what recruiting is all about. It's all about flipping players. It's all about putting a fence around your state. It's all about not giving up until the last minute. See, he commits to Jackson State 2-3 days before National Signing Day. You could quit then. But Coach Jack and all of his guys said, no, we're going to continue to pursue Chris Trumbull, a really talented edge rusher out of the state of Delaware, and we're going to make sure we get him done. I love this move because while recruiting is kind of like a soap opera, and if you really want to think about it, everybody just trying to steal somebody's person, man. Like, and it sucks. Because I actually watch soap operas, specifically General Hospital. I don't watch any other ones, but like to just narrow it down to that, my real soap people gonna be mad at me. I'm sorry, but anyway, the point is, this does just feel dramatic at all times. I'm waiting for who's gonna flip, who's gonna the hat. We think he's going to Auburn. Oh no, he's going to Alabama. Like it's just stupid stuff like this. But anyway, the point is that I believe that being able to pull in a recruit who was going to go to the HBCU national champions. You gotta remember this. Chris Trumbull had committed to go to Jackson State, the HBCU national champions, and a team that has a really good chance of doing it again, going back to back. They have that opportunity. And Chris Trumbull decided to stay at home. Yeah, I think Desean Jackson and the sway that he has is on display. We can point to it when we're talking about the California pipeline. I think we should point to it right now as well. But I really like Trumbull because when you're just looking at him, I'll say this. If they didn't steal Chris Trumbull from Jackson State and I was just a guy that Delaware State pulled in, I would still be pretty excited about it. I think the extra context to it and what it could mean for how your university looked at, I do think it's a little bit different, adds a little extra hype. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at Chris Trumbull, he's 6'4", 215, 220, coming out of high school with a frame that you could add some more weight on. He's extremely impressive just from the eye test and just the look of the length and everything that he provides. He's 6'4", 220. And he has crazy arms. He has crazy production over the year. 120 tackles, 27 tackles for a loss, 13 sacks. So when you're looking at Chris Trumbull from an eye test and a stat test, he does a lot of things that you like. He can't change how he's built, right? He can add some extra weight. I think he has the frame for that. 6'4", 215, 220. Let's call him somewhere in that range because I've seen both. That's a really good prototype of a physical build at the edge rusher position with extremely long arms. When you're talking about production, 120 tackles, 27 tackles for a loss, 13 sacks. That's all this year. That's really good production. And listen, I don't advise anybody to do this, but I did go look at the highlight tape and I had to come away with some takeaways. This is not at all a full breakdown, but one thing I noticed is how frequently he uses his hands to disengage from blockers. There's multiple times you see on tape where he's faster and bigger than people, and he just has open range like, gosh, I mean, did you try? But there's also a good amount of times in which he's hand fighting. And when you're going up a subdivision, not even a subdivision, you're going from high school to college. I want to know that you have a plan other than being bigger and faster than people. And I could tell by some of the highlights that at least he knows to use his hands. We would have to see what it looks like on a down in, down out basis. So do not scout based off of highlights. It's dangerous. You'll fall in love with a player off of his 15 best plays, and you didn't realize he has 60 bad plays, right? But I'm taking away a trait. I'm just going to take away a trait. And then lastly, when you're talking about what this is all about, you got to put a fence around your area. Who you competing with? You're the only one in the state. I know there's places that are close and everything, but this guy went to Red Light Christian Academy, 45 minutes to an hour up the road. You got to lock this down. At the end of the day, every school attempts to lock down their state. And when you've been bad for a while, sometimes it gets more difficult. That's the influence of Desean Jackson. So I'll say this, man. I am extremely excited to see what he does. I think he has the ability to be a freshman impact player, but here I am getting hype off of highlights again. So do as I say, not as I do, because I did have to see what this player was about. I just had to see what it was about. And at that frame, he already gets you interested. And when you see a skill set, it's there too, man. And he uses his length well. Let me say that. He instantly gets to hand fighting. He knows how to reach over, grab. The dude has good length, but there's people with length that don't know how to use it. Let me use this example real quick. When I was in high school, I believe I was a freshman. Maybe I was a sophomore. I don't remember when this guy I'm about to tell you about graduated, but it was one of those years. And it was this tall dude. I'm talking about, what? Tall to the mug. no coordination, couldn't play basketball, right? And I know tall people who can't play basketball hate hearing this, but I'm going to tell you what, non-tall people who would like your height hate seeing it. So at the end of the day, I have no sympathy for you here. You're going to have to hear these things. I'm not going to ask you how the weather is up there, but at the end of the day, I was 14 years old. Yeah, I was confused on why this dude who was taller than everybody I knew wasn't good at basketball. And the point I say about this is just because you have length, just because you have these God-given not even abilities, but these God-given traits, the size, just because you have that does not translate to being able to use it. Chris Trumbull can use it. Now, as we push forward, I want to take a look at the new contract for Patrick Crarey. Whoo! This is funny to me because you're telling me that after all of the disrespect, and it's really one comment in particular, but it was so strong that I can't help but remember and hold on to it indefinitely. After that disrespect, you want to offer a contract to Patrick Crarey? Let's get into this as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Now, maybe my guy Kellen Moore, the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints, could go ahead and go to Wayfair because he's moving to the Big Easy. No more Philadelphia for you. No more snow on a regular basis, even though Louisiana did just get some snow. But no more of that. If you want to redecorate your apartment, if you're going to get one, your house, if you're going to do that, all you need to do, Mr. Moore, is go to Wayfair. Whether you're looking for furniture, whether you're looking for art, everything you have, there's something for every style, every home. No matter your space, no matter your budget. And with that bankroll you just got, sir, you got a good budget. So I ain't pocket watching. Did I tell you that Wayfair can help you out on a time crunch with delivery free, hassle-free, and fast service? Listen, give your home the refresh. And I'm not just talking to more. Now I'm talking to you too. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now, ASAP. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Today with the biggest stories. And I can tell you what, the New Orleans Saints hiring Kellen Moore will be one of those big stories. But anyway, moving on from that, I want to get my laughs in. Because this is actually hilarious to me. The fact that FAMU wants to offer Patrick Crarey a contract extension in the middle of the year. When I saw the news that FAMU had a new contract offer on the table, I'm going to be honest with you. My first thought was, I'm glad that I don't do instant reactions. I'm glad that there's not just a camera on me, because what I said after was it was laced with quite a bit of profanity. And that's not what we do here. Listen, that's not the mouth of the South. That's Darrion that was talking. I was in my car and I seen that, and I instantly got into Patrick Crarey mode. I started talking about what I would say if I heard this news. And let's just say it was expletive after expletive after expletive. And that's when I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't just go in here with the little bit of, with this quote and just run with it. Because I've done that from time to time where I don't need to write down everything. This one I needed to write down so I could center my thoughts and tell you exactly what I feel. You would think that I was a FAMU alum the way that I was offended for Coach Crarey. You really would. But anyway, the point is, after the disrespect that I will get to in a second that was shown to Patrick Crarey, the FAMU Board of Trustees is ready to offer him a contract extension. It's warranted. He has 7 wins in conference play. You look at them over the last couple of years, and they just simply have not been that good of a team, right? You look in 2023, or just last year. I hate the basketball season, how it goes. But last year, 4 conference wins. The year before that, they had 5 conference wins. So far, they already have 7. So over the last 2 seasons, they've had 9. This year, Patrick Crarey, with the season far from over, is already at 7. He's very well on his way to matching the conference win total that FAMU has had over the last 2 seasons combined, and he's doing it in his first year on a 1-year contract. But let's look at what the new contract would look like. Naturally, you would have a bump in base pay. But here goes some of the incentives. You get a regular season conference championship, $1,000. Conference tournament championship, $2,000. Coach of the year, 2.5. You get into the NIT, you get 1,000. You get a win over a Power 5 school, you get 7,000, right? So this is pretty good. 2.5 for a tournament appearance. So in the big tournament, right? The big dance. 5 for a tournament victory and an additional 1 for each win. Now, mind you, you're already getting paid as a school for this. If you win in the big dance, you're already getting paid for making it to a game. But then you're talking about specifically going to the head coach. That's 2.5 thousand if you make it to the NCAA tournament. That's 5,000 if you get a win. And if you're in the first 4, you have a much better chance of getting a victory, which is essentially 7.5 thousand for not even getting into, for just making it into the 64. If you, I want to make sure I'm not misinterpreting. I want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting the value here. If you get into the NCAA tournament and you have to play in the play-in, which is called the first 4, you get 2.5 for that. If you win that game, you'll get 5,000 for that. That would give you a 7.5 thousand incentive for making it into the 64 if you make it that way. If you're just a 16 seed period, it'd be 2.5 thousand. And then, you pull off the upset in. Whew, we going crazy. But like the point is, I didn't want to make sure I want to make sure that was crystal clear. But if I'm Patrick Crarey, I'm not approaching this like a standard re-up. First and foremost, I'm not signing a deal until after the season because I want to explore my options. And I understand that runs the risk of me maybe tapering off, maybe some of my steam not being as hot. I get that. But at the end of the day, there was a disrespect that was shown to Patrick Crarey that, to me, is inexcusable. It was wrong when it was done, and it was something that I wouldn't forget. It would be very difficult for me to forgive if I was in his shoes. This is from a Board of Trustees member. He says, it bothers me when I see names on there, talking about the list of candidates for the head coaching job this offseason. It bothers me when I see some names on there, many of which I don't even know, but I look at their background and experience and wonder how we got to this individual that's 2 divisions beneath where we are playing in the SWAC. I don't ever want to hear from a Board of Trustee that my hire bothers you. How did we get to this individual? Man, I worked my tail off to get to this place. And you talking about me like I'm a nobody and putting it out there. This is going in the media. It bothers me. The fact that I was hired, it bothers you. I don't think that people understand. See, I've seen this quite a few times. Disrespect gets presented. Disrespect gets acknowledged. And the person who was disrespected and acknowledged the disrespect gets called emotional. Oh, you tripping. Man, forget that. That was disrespectful. And if I'm tripping over that, of course, because I think it's okay to trip about your respect. This is not something that just, oh, you hurt my feelings. No, my feelings ain't hurt because I know what type of coach I am. But at the same time, you disrespected me in a way that honestly, it's going to be hard for me to forget. That comes from a media member. That comes from Darrion, the mouth of the South. Cool. I brushed that off, right? Like I brushed that off because that's a media member talking. But as a person in the Board of Trustees, somebody who is advocating, has a real stock and has a voice in how my contract plays out, for you to say that shouldn't have came out of your mouth on a public forum. That was a heavy criticism. It was. And I don't care who has anything to say about this. You were banking on him to fail. FAMU was banking on Patrick Crarey to fail because you took a 3-year offer, said, nah. We're going to put it on 1 year. You got to prove yourself. Where does that happen at? If you, because I think it's the same Kevin Lawson person who said that, if he was the one who picked the coach, it wouldn't be, I'm going to pick him, give him a 1-year contract. If he proves himself, then we can come back to the drawing table. No, you saw somebody who it bothers you that they picked. You were wondering how they landed on this individual. You did not agree or believe in the hire. We're not going to try to spin it and act like, oh, we just wanted a tester. That's not how business is operated. Because I can guarantee you, if you pick somebody, you wouldn't have put them on this type of sample. You wouldn't put them on this type of hot seat instantly. So if I'm Patrick Crarey, I've been betting on myself all year long. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to make it to the end of the year. I'm going to look to see, okay, what are my options like? I'm not just saying, yeah, I'm going to re-up with FAMU because we've been here. I'm going to go and I'm going to see. I'm not writing them off because I'm having a good amount of success, and it can be difficult to build a program. But if I just turn this team around in 1 year and everybody saw where you were at the year before me and the year before that, I'm sure that I would have a market. I'm sure I would have a market. I'm going to go explore that market. Maybe I decide to come back to FAMU. We'll see. But at the end of the day, I'll never forget that my hire bothered you, and you are wondering why we got or how we got to this individual. It's one thing to disagree, but how you do things matters. How you do things matters. That's all I got to say on that. So, yeah, that was slander in my opinion. But let's get into Lucheyona Weaver and Gabbi Cunningham, because these two ladies were going at it over the last 2 weeks in the 60-meter hurdles at two different events, and both times the Aggie came out victorious. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Lucheyona Weaver versus Gabbi Cunningham has been a series that I did not know that I needed in the indoor season, because over the last 2 weeks it's come down to the North Carolina A&T hurdler and then the unattached Gabbi Cunningham. And not only the Gamecock Challenge at the beginning of February on the very first day of the month, then also this weekend on the 8th. Was that this weekend? Let's see, 10, 9. Yeah, that was Saturday. But also on the weekend, you had the Liberty Open. In both times, the 60-meter hurdles, first place and second place, came down to Weaver and Cunningham. If I'm not saying Lucheyona's name correctly, please forgive me. I couldn't find a pronunciation, but I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. But yeah, these two didn't run in the same heat at the Gamecock Challenge in the prelims. Weaver actually ran, I think, in heat 2, and I think Cunningham was in heat 1, and that was the only time that Cunningham actually bested her. Ironically, it's the only time that these two ran in the same event, but they weren't in the same heat. So in the prelims, you see Weaver run at 8:36, but Cunningham runs at 8:33. Those are the two best times of anybody in the prelim. So now we get to the finals, and there's no more being a heat apart. We're in the same heat. Now I have my eyes on you clearly, right? Like I have my eyes on what it is that you're capable of, and you have your eyes on me. And what we saw was a drastic improvement, which I'll get to in a second, is not rare for Weaver. She goes from her 8:36 to a 8:16. She dropped two tenths off of her time. Meanwhile, Cunningham runs at 8:31. So you have a 2/10 improvement versus a 200th improvement. And that's a drastic difference. It's a clear lead by by Weaver over Cunningham. So the next week rolls around and we get to the Liberty Open. And this time in the prelims, they are in the same heat. So in this heat, you go ahead and get an 8-2 by Weaver, and you get an 8:32 by Cunningham. So we're real close, right? Like we're 1.2 away, or 0.12 away. Then you get to the 60-meter hurdles finals in the Liberty Open, and they're once again running next to each other, but this time they're running with each other, but this time they're running next to each other. So it's no longer just, okay, you in this lane, I'm in that lane, I'm in this heat, you in that heat. Now, it's none of that. We're right here. It's you and I, Akwem and I, the same people who've been 1 and 2 every step of the way. Now we right next to each other. And this was the closest race that we've had of the, I guess, trio, really, even though we're looking at a quartet of races. But this is the first one of the trio that was the closest, man. It was the first one that was under a 1/10 of a difference. So once again, you see a slight improvement. Mind you, Weaver already ran an 8-2 in the prelims at the Liberty Open. But then she runs an 8-17, an 8-17. Shout out to the city. But she runs an 8-17 in that event. But man, I'm looking at Cunningham. She runs an 8-23, and that can be aggravating because you're running these times, and it's like I keep running against this girl, and I finally get my best of the last 2 weeks, and she runs an 8-17. And this really just continues a strong indoor season for Weaver. Like when you just look at what Weaver has been able to accomplish, of course you look at the Liberty Open, of course you look at the Gamecock Challenge and what she's been able to do when going up against Gabbi Cunningham. But it's not as if this is foreign to her, you know. In the Gamecock opener, which is not the challenge, but in the Gamecock opener, which was their first event, their first meet of the year, she ran 3 60-meter hurdles. In the prelims, 8:25, prelims, 8:22, and then she ran an 8:2 there. But I'd say in the Corky Challenge, that was her best day, period, because you're looking at an 8:14 in the first prelims, 8:14, then you run an 8:35, and you drop it down to an 8:11, which is her season best this year, an 8:11. Those are her 2 best times of the season thus far, an 8:11 and an 8:14. They both came in the Corky Challenge. Now, what's interesting about that is that she didn't win those. It's actually the only time that she didn't win. You go through it in the opener, first place. In the Corky Challenge, it goes 3, 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I did read that backwards. She ran an 8:11 in the prelim, 8:35 in the prelim, and then an 8:14 in the final. But the point is, an 8:14 or an 8:11 would have got you the victory in these last 2 events. It got you second and third place in that Corky Classic. And we went over the Gamecock Challenge and the Liberty Open. But overall, you're looking at a really good start to the indoor season by the North Carolina A&T hurdler. And this is what the Aggies do. Like when you really look at it, they just continue to put out people who are always going to be competitive. And we've seen that for years. You lose your coach, you come back, you're still doing what you need to with a new coach. People are still coming in. This was just an impressive little, I don't even call it a rivalry because A, it was 2 weeks, B, it was Weaver over Cunningham every time that they were toe-to-toe, and it was 3 different races in which they were toe-to-toe. But this was a nice little series. It was really interesting watching the difference between the prelims and then also the finals, seeing Weaver's ability to drop from the 8.3 range down to the 8.1 range is like, and seeing that she hadn't done that, that wasn't the first time she had done that. So it was just these trends and things that I like keeping track of. But Lucheyona Weaver going up against Gabbi Cunningham, who was a 2020 Tokyo Olympian. Yeah, I think that this is the type of thing to get you noticed, this type of thing to get on the radar. And over the last 2 weeks, she's done really good. We'll see what happens as the indoor season continues for North Carolina A&T. They have countless other people on that team, both men and women, who have had success over the last couple of weeks. But that Weaver versus Cunningham, it stood out. You know, I'm a sucker for storytelling. So, yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably be looking at Michael Vick's class in Norfolk State to see how many quarterbacks he got, things of that nature. Because I think he may have had more than just the 2 that we broken down. I got to go back and look again. But you'll be back tomorrow to get the confirmation. I promise you I won't be unsure or uncertain on Thursday. But in the meantime, in between time, and then Friday, we're going to do our Legacy Bowl preview a little bit because I have a question that I want to ask. So be prepared on that on Friday. I want to see if people are going to try to check out of the game. But we'll talk about all of this as the week concludes. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.